Welcome back, everybody. This is Josie. What we're going to do now is look at a page that says VS Visit. That's in the manual right after the checklist page. Jason's figuring out how to advance this. Okay, so what we want to do is just cover a few items about administration of the questionnaire. And then due to people's schedules, we're going to go through the questionnaire out of order to allow people that need to get off the call sooner to do their section. So for the VMO questionnaire, I've already mentioned this, but it's to be administered during in-person interview. The packet that you'll get includes the participant agreement. And this needs to be completed before the interview. I've said this before, but these people have not agreed to participate until they've signed the participant agreement. The participant agreement is in your manual, and it'll be on the cover of the questionnaire. The first page must be filled out completely and signed by the participant before the interview. Page 2 explains the biologics, the tick exam, and the biosecurity assessment. And there's a section for the participant to indicate they do want to do this or they do not. And so we need every option there to either have a yes or a no initialed by the participant. One of the copies is it's indicated on the page. The yellow copy stays with the participant, and the white copy is sent to the NAHMS coordinator, and the NAHMS coordinator keeps those consent forms. And it's this consent form that the coordinator can use when they're asked for the summaries from Abby as to what the participant has agreed to do. We've already gone over confidentiality, and Abby will be sending out any follow-up email with the decisions from the NAHMS leadership and how they want to handle that. Okay, so on the next page, it's about the biologic sampling, tick exam, and biosecurity assessment. Again, they need to initial, they want to do it or they don't want to do it for each option. Key point is they don't have to do any of the biologics or biosecurity assessment. If they only want to do the questionnaire, that's fine. They can do one of the biologics and not the others. So they can pick and choose. But they can't participate in the biologics until they've completed the questionnaire. So they can't just do the parasite testing and not be part of the having done the questionnaire. The next page is the actual participant agreement. And I'm obviously not going to read all of that, but it does need to be completed. The participant signs it, and the person that's there to witness them signing it also signs on that first page. The next page is where I'm talking about they either have to say they agree or they don't want to participate in each of those options. Okay, so now we're on to questionnaire responses. I've already mentioned it's a good idea to have a blank copy of the questionnaire so the person can follow along. A key point for those of you that haven't done NAHMS questionnaires before is that you need to read all of the questions in their entirety, and you're to read each potential response. Because in reading the responses, people may think, oh no, I don't do that, or whatever. And as you read the potential responses, they think, oh yeah, I did do that, and this is what I did. Please don't leave any questions blank. So there's an option to say the participant refused, or they don't know, but please don't leave them blank. If a response is 0, please enter a 0, not a dash, or leave it blank. We encourage you to write in the margins to explain the circumstances to answers that aren't easily put into the categories that we've provided. It is okay to have the participants say they don't know, or they decline to answer a certain question. The NAHMS studies are voluntary, so they're not obligated to answer every question. We just need to know they declined to answer. We also want you to give the participants additional time to look up information if it's not available at the time of the visit, and this can be done through a follow-up phone call by the VMO to the participant. Please write comments directly on the questionnaire. We at NAHMS will deal with the unusual situations where they don't fit into obvious categories. We would ask that all the completed questionnaires be back to the coordinators within 3 working days. We ask that the coordinators check the questionnaires for completeness, and if they're not complete, follow up with the VMO or HT to try to get as much information as possible. We do need to account for all of the operations, so please indicate on the non-respondent documentation if they declined and the reason, or if you couldn't reach them, the attempts that were made to reach them. We don't expect 100% participation. We're very hopeful that everybody will participate, but we recognize some people will decline, but we do need to account for them. Okay, so now I'm going to move to the actual questionnaire section of the manual. And this is where it would be helpful for you to have viewing of the questionnaire itself. That's tab 4 in the manual. And Jason will actually have the manual portion on the screen. So you may want to move to tab 4, be it on the electronic or on the hard copy as we move forward. We're not going to address every question in every section. What we're going to try to do is highlight why we're asking the questions we are to achieve our objectives and talk a little bit about the sections that we think will be challenging. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and we will go to the lameness section. And Dr. Al Kane is going to lead off because he has some prior commitments. So that's Section E of the lameness questionnaire. And Jason can, yes, page 16. No, excuse me, sorry guys. Lameness is page 34.
Okay, while they're following that, or finding that, I'm going to start. This is Al Kane. Thank you, Josie. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can. Go ahead, Al.
Okay. If anybody can't hear me, speak up. I guess I'm causing some feedback perhaps with my headset. If that's still a problem, somebody send me a message and I'll switch to the phone. But so far it sounds okay to me at least.
Sounds okay to us, Al.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. Thanks everybody for participating. The lameness section is perhaps unusual for the USDA history of focusing on infectious disease, but in past NAHMS studies, lameness has been a very valuable part of the study. It's a widely referenced resource for information on the occurrence of lameness, and I'm really excited that we were able to include this most important part of the study again. So I'll jump right in. The first 3 lameness questions are very important ones because they help establish the numerator and the denominator for several of the rest of the questions. These questions are very clear to us because we wrote them, and obviously we don't think of everything and miss things, but the first question refers to equines that have lameness today, on that given day. And this would include, by definition, horses that are showing clinical signs of lameness today, as well as horses that are being managed because they have a lameness problem. So in other words, a horse with navicular disease that may not be showing signs of lameness, but he's constantly under treatment, or a change of use because of that navicular disease is considered a horse with a lameness problem. And those are the ones we want to capture in the first question. The second question would include that horse as well as any horse in the previous 12 months that had a lameness that was completely resolved, but it occurred in the last 12 months. So a horse that had a foot abscess, was lame, met the definition for lameness, in other words, needed treatment or wasn't used for a few days, but that lameness completely resolved, that horse would also be counted in the answer to question number 2, whether or not the horse was currently lame or currently receiving medication, etc. And then when we come to the third question, that one requires a little bit of thought and some background work, and it's the basis for many of the following questions. So there is a worksheet on page 28 of the questionnaire that I was just looking at to help you kind of answer the rest of the questions. Let me go back to it. It's called, if I can find it. Yeah, it's called Section E Worksheet, Lameness in Resident Equines in the Previous 12 Months. And the concept here is that for question 2, we would assume that most people you're interviewing would know about horses lame. If it's an animal that boards at the facility or they don't own it, they might still know that it was lame. But in question 3 and beyond, we're going to ask for details about how it was treated or how the case was managed, etc. So they may not know those detailed answers for every horse that they knew that was lame. So we're going to establish a new denominator, if you will, with question 3. Now the worksheet is to kind of help you and help them keep track of the horses that they're going to discuss that have lameness. Now if they have 100 horses on the facility, you're going to estimate these numbers. You're not going to be expected to list every single one by name. That's probably not going to work out very well. But if they have 6, 8, 10 horses, it might help, this is optional obviously, but it might help to just go ahead and list their names, that is lame horses, and then you can fill in the rest of the information as you answer the questions. So I hope that made some sense. It'll make more sense, I think, when you look at it. But this question number 3 is kind of an important one to establish the denominator for several of the next questions. And the idea here is to identify the number of horses for which you can answer detailed treatment and management questions for the rest of the questionnaire. So then when we get into question 4, that's the beginning of the questions that should add up to the total number of animals recorded in the answer for question 3. And that phrase is the one that's going to repeat here. The total should equal the number recorded for question 3. And question 4 is a breakdown by age, and that is the age that they are today. Questions 5 and 6 are relatively straightforward. They go to the use of the animals, that is lame resident equines, and the sex of the lame horses. We're not talking about all the horses, just the lame ones. Same with number 7, that goes to breed. And again, the total, so if you're looking at 7, that would be 7S, should equal the total under question 3. Bear with me, I'm going to go back to the little web interface in case there's something there that I'm missing. All right, number 8 refers to the outcome for the lame horses. Again, this is a summary count of them, and the total equals question. This is where it might be helpful, for example, to have the names of the horses listed so that you can sort of recall how many had each outcome. What we're interested in is categorizing a horse by its most severe outcome. So if a horse improved but still had lameness, but then it was sold or given away because of lameness, it's going to be counted not twice. It's going to be counted under the highest letter, if you will. And that example would be F. So going on to question 9 and 10. Again, the totals should equal the number in question 3. This goes to the duration of lameness and the lost use, the accumulated time of lost use for each horse with lameness, each equine with lameness. Number 11, very similar question. I'm checking notes in about 3 different places, so bear with me. And beginning with number 12, the question and 14, etc., refers to the animals that were discussed in question 3, but the total doesn't have to add up to the animals in question 3. So starting with number 12, you're no longer going back to double check that you have the same total that you had for question 3. I hope that makes sense. And the reason is because you may count horses in more than one category, but you're only going to count it for a given category one time. And that's probably confusing. But let's look at an example on question number 13. We're interested in which diagnostic procedures did horses receive. So if a horse received diagnostic nerve blocks as well as x-rays, you would count that particular horse under each category E as well as G. But if he received nerve blocks 3 different occasions, you only count it one time. Hope that's clear. 14, 15, again, it refers to the animals in question 3, but the totals aren't going to add up to question 3. And 14 is where, again, this seemed very clear to us because we wrote the question, but if there are conditions that you're not sure how to categorize them, it is fair game to write notes in the margin, which we will review and help to categorize them. If you aren't sure if something is a limb problem or a foot problem, write the best description you can for where it occurred and what occurred, and we'll try to help make that distinction. Foot really refers to hoof and heel bulbs, and anything pastern and above in my book is the horse's limb. So sometimes that comes up. Let's see, where are we? I think 14 is the one where people are, potentially going to scribble some notes in the margin, and that's okay. Again, if an animal has one of those conditions, has more than one condition, you will count it more than once. So if it has a hoof bruise as well as a joint sprain, you would count each of those. But if it has 3 joint sprains, you're only going to count that one time for that particular horse. And I've totally lost track of my time, but I'm just moving on. 15. Again, I wouldn't be surprised to see some notes written in the margins here. We tried to come up with as many categories as we could without it being too confusing. There are, other is certainly a, there's 2 different other options. One is for specifically alternative medical treatments, things like acupuncture, chiropractic. If it received herbology or whatever, I would expect you to write that under U. And then V is just other things we didn't think of. And if there's uncertainty, we do want you to specify for both of those what they are, and if we need to recategorize something because we consider that it should have been captured up above, we can do that. When you get to 16, that's where you shift gears at the very end here to horses that are not lame, and this refers to all resident equines, whether or not they've ever been lame. This is the question that relates to prevention. So an important distinction in the definition of lameness is the animal's receiving therapy or treatment of lameness. If lameness was diagnosed and the animal's on ongoing therapy to treat that condition because the condition is the sort that doesn't get cured and goes away, then it's considered to be under treatment. If it's just getting old and they want to prevent it from having a lameness problem due to arthritis or whatever, that would be considered prevention if it had not yet been diagnosed. And so we want to capture that on this last question, not quantitatively, but simply yes or no, do they use these things in their resident horses to prevent lameness? And with that, I lost track of time, so I don't know if that was fast or slow, but I'm certainly willing to entertain questions.
That was very good, Al. I think you're well within your time. There are several scenarios in the manual that you saw as you moved through. We put those in because we thought those were potentially challenging aspects of this particular section. I'd like to go ahead, Daniel, and remind people how to open their line so that while Al is still available, if there are any questions or comments, you could address those.
To ask a verbal question, you can please dial #2 on your handset to raise your hand, or you can send a note on the right side of your screen to all presenters. And again, that is #2 to ask a verbal question.